Okay. Here
All
we are.
right. Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first YouTube episode. And we are here. We are with Nicole Brown Faulknor. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And she is the founder of the Trauma and Embodiment Association of Ontario, this space, this corner of YouTube, which we are holding here. So, Nicole, I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what TAO is about? Yeah, let us know who you are.
Okay, thank you. And I want everyone to know who you are because Nora actually writes all of our newsletters and brings in topics and themes that we organically kind of do like this. Like we just begin to chat and be curious about things that people are usually curious about. And it creates such a phenomenal newsletter that connects with people's hearts or connects to curiosities that they have. So thank you for coordinating the project of the newsletter and yeah, initiating the start of this little corner of the world on YouTube. So I am the CEO and founder, as Nora says, of the Trauma and Embodiment Association. And what we get to do is we get to destigmatize mental health in various ways. So one of the ways we do that are through our training and our programming and our collective and community care projects out in the community. So destigmatizing stigmas that are attached within the mental health care system is something that is usually unspoken, but it's in there. So we just unlearn our way out of the gaps in the mental health care system to reach people who are lost in the mental health care system. And so when you work with people in community, it means that you have to work with people on the top because people on the top mirror trauma unintentionally. Most harm is unintentional, by the way. Most people don't know that. I would say high 90% it's unintentional harm that's mirrored back into communities that we're trying to serve because of unconscious blind spots of our own, unconscious biases, trauma responses that we have that look like patterns of behavior that we bring to work, like through fixing or over identifying these types of things. So we run training that's designed for the people who run organizations, and then we stay on the ground and do the groundwork. So it kind of meets in the middle. So that's what we do in a nutshell. So we love educating, and we're going to do that, aren't we, Nora?
Yes, we are. No, and I love that you say that TAO really works with people at the top and in the ways that we mirror trauma because a lot of this newsletter, right, is having us reflect on really how we show up because what we learn are behaviors. Sometimes,
Mhm.
people tell us these things, whatever, but what we're reflecting back is behaviors, and sometimes those things are unconscious to us. So I love that you really touch on the point that it works. We have to be on both ends, right here addressing the things that are being mirrored back to us, but also on the ground with the people
Mhm.
knowing. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you. And we're going to start first by going through the newsletter that we had for this past week. We're starting off August discussing self abandonment. So I'm going to share here my screen
Okay.
where
You
um,
there? There.
we're going to enable that sharing.
Yeah, okay, I think I
um,
got you.
and I'm going to be reading from our newsletter. So, self abandonment, the overlooked trauma response.
Hmm.
So, dear community, have you ever sat with self abandonment? Self abandonment is a quiet, internalized coping strategy we learn in unsafe, invalidating, or overwhelming environments. Often, this coping mechanism we learn in our childhood when we felt like we had to leave behind a part of ourselves in order to prioritize someone else or an external expectation. This can look like suppressing or neglecting our personal needs, emotions, boundaries, time, money, and desires so that the needs of others are above our own. Some of us struggle with self-abandonment because we learned it as part of our culture or religion. Self-abandonment is a pattern of behavior where a person denies their own needs to prioritize the needs of another or an external expectation. This pattern leads to a disconnect from the authentic self. The self must be denied or suppressed in order to prioritize others, which can lead to feelings of resentment, emptiness, and disconnection. As one of the most overlooked trauma responses, we want to hold space for what self abandonment looks like. It looks like dismissing your feelings to avoid conflict, over caretaking others while neglecting your own needs, shrinking yourself to fit in or be loved, feeling unsafe in your own body or boundaries. We learn to abandon ourselves not because we were flawed, but because it was safer than being rejected, punished, or ignored. This month, we're exploring how this pattern, we are exploring this pattern and we're gently interrupting it to begin this sacred return back to ourselves.
Mm, mm, mm.
Now, that part, we learned to abandon ourselves not because we were flawed, but because it was safer than being rejected, punished, or ignored.
Mhm. You know, as soon as you read something like that, you know me and you behind the scenes, but now we're online, but it makes me want to go right to the root. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
read that again. I love your voice too, but read that part again.
yeah. We learn to abandon ourselves not because we were flawed, but because it was safer than being rejected, punished, or ignored.
Mm. Now, the root of that. So as soon as someone says, I don't want to self-abandon, or I notice that I do self-abandon, if we don't understand the root of the self-abandonment, we will continue to do that because the
Yeah.
pain and the fear of the feeling of being rejected, punished, or ignored supersedes
Mm,
everything else because it is now a survival response. And it is
yeah.
born out of our attachment injuries. And we have to keep in mind that our attachments are the roots of our sense of worth, our sense of confidence, and the roots of our self-esteem. So they're enmeshed until we begin to tolerate the feeling of standing in ourselves. And usually people don't want to do that. It's not because they don't, but the feeling of guilt or, ooh, I'm going to be in trouble becomes
Yeah.
bigger. And
Yeah.
so they don't want to practice the tolerance of
Mm,
building that muscle up because it's emotions are a muscle. We have to think about it. Emotions are bodily sensations. And if our nervous
yeah.
system is our body, think about this. If our nervous system is our body, why when we're stressed, we got to tight back, right? And
Mm,
yeah, and our emotions, our bodily sensations that give information to our brain that gives us a feeling, fear, I'm scared, then our bodies will have a hard time tolerating when we begin to branch away from ways that we had learned to stay safe.
mm, mm. Okay, so see, this is, first of all, you just, because like, we, and even just having to think about the ways that this is, we have to go to our emotional gym. Like right now I'm in my, like, trying to stay in my physical gym bag, but where are, like, my emotional, the really learning that these things are, it feels so uncomfortable. Like
Mhm,
the changes that I'm trying to bring, addressing these things in myself, addressing even the self-abandonment right
mhm,
within me, it is uncomfortable. But I have to remember this word you said, like, I have to practice this emotional muscle.
mm,
Um, but so I'm really going into, we got to go to our emotional gym, y'all. Okay,
mm.
community. So y'all got to join us here because we got to go to our emotional gym.
We do.
But you talk about attachment, right? So we got to go back to our childhood. And that's something that we discuss here in this newsletter, that the root of this really stems from our attachment. So a lot of that stems in our childhood. Can you discuss a little bit more of that? Because one of the reflections that we asked our community to sit with, and I've also been sitting with, is
Mm,
where did I first learn to connect from myself in order to be safe?
mm. Hmm. Yeah, so what it's like a lot of times where people are like, "Oh, right, we have to do therapy, we have to go back to our childhood. It all stems from there." I say, because it does. Because children are so resilient. They are so resilient. So much so they're divine to me because they learn these things without anyone teaching them. So in their biology, when their nervous system, which is their bodies, start to get overwhelmed with emotions and there's no one to attune or regulate it with them, they learn these patterns. Okay. And so tracing it back to our childhood says, first we have to learn the impact of our childhood had on us. So a lot of times we spend a lot of time protecting our childhood, protecting the adults in our childhood. They did the best they could. It's because of this, why they did that, but we don't spend a lot of time on the impact of what they've done, which will help with this emotional muscle of guilt, which is I have a sense of accountability or responsibility to what
Yeah.
happened to me, which in essence we do, in essence, but we also have a sense of responsibilities to ourselves that we abandon in this type of way of thinking. So we understand our childhood from the impact that it had on us, so we can feel what we went through. Knowing
Mm,
and feeling are two different placements, polarities in the body. So it is to feel what we went through. And those of us who have survived our childhood, we are so, so, so good at narrating our childhood. We can tell you what happened and why. We could do it over tea. We could do it canoeing. Like we could do it anywhere. Okay. But we're not very good at feeling what we went through because as a child, when things are overwhelming, the default in the body is to wire around patterns of behavior in order to keep us safe when we don't have people that tuned emotionally with us, who regulated us after something, or we didn't have a safe or soft place to go to be like, Tanisha bullied me today on the playground. I was sad. All a child needs is somebody to be there to mirror back something to them. But when we don't, we just start creating patterns like, be a good girl out there, then no one will
yeah.
bother you. People please, like the person who bullied me. Like I remember I became friends with someone who bullied me. Like what? I look back in grade 5 and be like, why? Like, but it was safer to do that, which I understand
Yeah.
it now as an adult as people pleasing, to be safe than to have them pick on me being the only person that looked like me with a big red clip in my hair. I don't know, like, with the Jerry curls back in the 80s, but that's another day. Okay. So
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And it's really wild how we learn to disconnect and feel safer, and those feelings really overtake. For me, when I think about self-abandonment and I trace it to my roots, I really think about when I was 9, right? Like I was like my first year of school here in the US. And let me tell you, sometimes the US educational system is not that good. We moved to the South. We're coming from Colombia. So me speaking Spanish doesn't really make sense. They're like, what are you, like, who, this whole, I'm an immigrant, right? But I'm also the smartest girl in the class by like, so I really stand out, and the teachers take note of that. And I remember having a hard time making connections, and so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be smart anymore. It's too hard to make friends if you're smart.
Mm.
But that stuff stayed with me for 20 years. When I look back on it, I realized the ways in which in class I would know something, internally I would say something, but I would not raise my voice to say it, right? Going back into what it looks like, right? What the patterns that
Mhm.
I created in order to feel connection looked like me suppressing my voice, suppressing my knowings. But that led to a lot of disconnection back to myself. Right now, in my early 30s, I am coming back to this feeling of authenticity, of remembering, hey, you are this girl, right? But it was in those moments, right, that this overwhelming sense of like guilt and need for connection, being an immigrant, right, in a new country, led me to abandon a part of myself that's actually very, very useful to have.
Right?
So,
Right?
and seeing how long, really how long it took me 20 years to really tap into my like inner genius again, right? But I really did abandon. And so sometimes I think it's so important that we start to look back at those behaviors, like you were saying, those patterns and those feelings, and how they kind of just stay even in adulthood, that and it seemed kind of normal, but when you look back you're like, oh yeah, no, this is where it started,
Mm,
and this is how I started acting because of that. um,
exactly.
but what do we do when we learned it from our culture and from our religion? Because I also struggle with that being a pastor's kid. How do we navigate those tensions?
Hmm. Well, the bigger work really is discerning what part is me and what part are my patterns of behavior or my survival strategies or my coping
Yeah.
skills. And I think a lot of healing journey is to discern that. So it moves us back to our most authentic self. And sometimes people ask me, how do I know my most authentic self? Well, I'll tell you about mine. When I'm scared, when my heart starts racing again, because I have to s- advocate for myself, I will
Mm-hmm.
tremble still to this day because my body does not discern, because my body doesn't have my eyeballs to see that this is so and so in front of me, and it doesn't have my brain to process 1979 to 2025. So it doesn't understand past or present. So it says that the person that I am going to confront could be my mother, it could be the people that harmed me, and it only goes by memory of what it felt like to be seen. And so it's terror. It's still
Yeah.
terror. And so
Yeah.
the journey of healing work is to discern which part is my personality and which parts are my survival strategies or coping mechanisms. And to do that says that when I start shaking and doing that, my true self is behind there. And I do it shaking anyways. And I say, I can't let you continue with that conversation. I need a little bit more time. Well, everything in me makes me get off the call, lose my breath.
Yeah.
I'm over like, whoa, that was, but I practice this emotional muscle and
Mm.
I begin to build tolerance into the spaces that terrified me and where the patterns of behavior began.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We all have a
A lot
story.
of observation. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I said we all have a story. So it is for us to discern our story, but I feel you're
Yeah.
coming in. So come on in.
Oh no, I was saying a lot of it is it's like you're saying, we have to observe. We have to observe our story, observe, we listen and we don't judge to
Mm.
ourselves,
We
to our
listen and
story,
we don't judge. I love that. That's a TikTok,
okay.
isn't it? And I love it.
Because we just cannot, we learn sometimes our survival responses that sometimes, like you were saying, we look back and we're like, what? But looking and understanding the behaviors and the feelings and the reasons behind why those things are appearing in our lives, so we can choose our own selves, and we can be in this gym and really transform ourselves back to who we are. I mean, our bodies are amazing, but one of the things that we have been sitting with, as we observe what's mine, what's my culture, what's my religion, who I really am, in the moments where we override our truth to maintain connection, how do we come back to center? And
Mhm.
in those many moments where we're like, we said yes but we really meant no, or we we did the stuff that we didn't want to do just because it's our family, or even though it's hurting us, or we went against who we really are. How do we come back to center and maintain connection?
Hmm. Well, when our bodies feel safe, our heart will speak our truths. And so I'd imagine, knowing what I know about trauma, I don't know, I just study it in my sleep. I don't know, I just have such great interest in how it shows up. But
Yeah,
I'd imagine that most of our lives before building awareness around the self-abandonment, like who am I and what are my survival strategies, or is this a trauma response? Like how I learned to show up with people and in situations and during events in order to stay safe. That, you know, we continue patterns. The psyche continues patterns because we're trying to resolve what happened to us. So unconsciously, that's what the body's always trying to do. So it's never doing
yeah,
anything bad. Okay, it's always trying to resolve and give our bodies opportunity through different situations with different people to finally do the thing. So I'd imagine what would help us out, as a collective, individually doing our work, is to find safer spaces, because when the body is safe, the heart speaks. But if the body's not safe, the body's designed to protect us. It's going to go back to your pattern. You're going to be okay. They're going to connect to
yeah,
you. You're going to be just fine and loved. So it will default. It will default. So our work in the core of it all is to find places where our bodies feel softer, where we feel grace, where we feel understood. And we practice our tail end off there, because the heart will begin to speak on its own, its truth, and the body won't need to protect the heart as much as it does. Okay. Yeah.
okay. That that's beautiful, and really, it's it's wild to really think that once our bodies are safe, we really do know how to open up and how to heal. And can you leave us, as we're wrapping up, with one practice of finding these safe spaces, even when we cannot physically move locations?
Hmm.
How what ways can we find safety?
Okay. So the way to find safety for my body is to learn to be with my body. Because if I don't feel safe in my body's not going to feel safe anywhere. And one of the things, the patterns of behaviors does, or our survival strategies, our coping mechanisms, is it takes us out of our bodies because it was no longer safe to be in there. And that's why we're always on the side with these patterns of
Yeah,
behavior and disembodied. So
yeah,
our hand, I don't know if most folks know this. And first of all, somatic work
yeah,
is being picked up in the pop culture, but our somatic work really is about pushing the overwhelm out of the body so we have capacity. Okay. So one that's just always accessible is using my hand over my heart, to be honest, because not only do we have pain receptors in the fingertips, but the touch of our own hands over the heart, and just spending even just a minute trusting the rhythm of our bodies, the touch of our hands, and allowing our bodies to naturally find its own equanimity. So here's a pause for you.
I can feel my heart slowing down.
You know what I
And
mean?
I hope you can also feel that. Like, I really felt like I was like, okay, I tapped in. Like,
You know what I
I
mean?
am
And
here.
it takes a minimum of 60 seconds.
Mm,
We're so mind dominant. But I even noticed, I thought I was okay, okay. My shoulders dropped, my belly relaxed, like lots of holding in the body. Our body's always
yeah,
holding to protect us. Brilliant.
yeah. Okay. All right, y'all. So 1 minute, 60 seconds. You can even set a timer. Tap in. Just tap in. Sometimes we think these things are like, oh, whatever, a minute, but like, you're just 1 minute at your emotional gym. 1 minute at your emotional gym starts adding up, right? We're all about 1% better. 1% into just investing in us. So just that 1 minute tap, and these are things we do to start just softening in and coming into some. We've been through stuff, right? Like we said, we've been through our story. So coming in gently and even spending that minute with ourselves is honoring ourselves. So that is something that we want to remember. But there's also a lot of things also happening in community. And Nicole, I want to start off first by this call that the organization has for board members, and that is coming up soon. So I want to let you talk a little bit more about this call for board members to join the team at the Trauma and Embodiment Association of Ontario, TEAO.
We are very, again, we create everything. If you want to make a change in the mental health care system or all system, you have to be the change. And it starts with our board of directors, and we have a very non-traditional approach, even to how we run the organization. And so we are looking for leads in certain, because we've grown so much in the past year, specifically under finance, after director of impact and strategy and fund development. So we are looking for some fresh eyes and some open hearts to help lead in that new beginnings. Our work, and a lot of people don't know, but is to become a facility here in Canada, a trauma health facility. And so doing the legwork and having these leaders lead us and steward the organization is very important at this time as we go through this reshift.
So that is going on. So please make sure to reach out to info@taocanada.com if you are interested in that. There's also the deadline for that. I'm sorry, it's August 30th of this month. We are also hosting space for somatic peer support groups, and that will launching on September 10th. It is on Wednesdays. This is virtual, bi-weekly. So Nicole, let us know a little bit more about the somatic peer support.
Love this. Okay, that what you're doing. Okay, right. So every 2 weeks, we open up online for somatic peer support groups, so people have a space to go. We're talking about today finding community, finding softness where you could just be. Most of our mental health symptoms are exacerbated because of the isolation and the individuation that our Western world has. Around mental health or community. And so that's a space to be with other peers and be facilitated through somatic work and normalizing and practicing to speak and of what you're going through and all that in a space that is designed for you. So we do offer that every 2 weeks. Alternatively, those who are local to our area, we do it at a library in between those weeks, and we're set up as the trauma informed circles. And so people come in from communities and all walks of life to these circles, and we do the same thing in that. Now, it is not a form of therapy or anything like that. Although anything in community I find is therapy, okay? But although I lead those groups, and yeah, it has built itself in itself over the last year and has built communities with each other, even though we weren't operating over the summer. So that'll continue. As well as in October, we do have this is one of our first, thanks to funding, the Waterloo Region Community Fund. We are offering trauma responsive care training for racialized leaders in the community, and that's going to be online so that we can reach as many people as we'd like. Usually, the training does have quite a cost value to it because we have certifications through our organizations to do trauma informed care from an embodied sense, not from knowing, but to feeling how I interact with my own helplessness when helping people. So this to offer at no cost for racialized body just feels overdue, and I'm really excited to run this 2-day training, October 15 and 16.
Right, awesome. I'm so excited to be in this community with you all. Lastly, I want to shout out the collective care circles that are also happening.
Yeah.
And we will link all of the activities going on underneath this video. There will also drop the link tree. So stay connected via via YouTube, in person, of course. Sign up for the newsletter. And remember those 60 seconds. Thank you for coming to your emotional gym, spending time with us. I definitely feel refreshed. My heart feels fuller. And I'm so excited to be in this space with y'all. So,
Thank you. Bye, everyone.